Chapter 1. The Invitation to Ashwell. In the waning days of autumn, when the leaves of London's trees turned to shades of amber and gold, Hercule Poirot sat in his impeccably ordered flat at Whitehaven Mansions. The fire crackled softly, casting a warm glow over the polished mahogany furniture and the neat rows of books that lined his shelves. Poirot, with his fastidious moustache and gleaming patent leather shoes, was savouring a tisane, its delicate aroma curling through the air. His small, precise hands held a letter, the envelope bearing the crest of Ashwell College, a venerable institution nestled in the rolling hills of Oxfordshire. "Monsieur Hastings," Poirot called, his voice carrying the faintest trace of amusement. "What do you make of this invitation? It is most curious, non?" Captain Arthur Hastings, Poirot's loyal friend and occasional chronicler, looked up from his newspaper, his brow furrowing. "Invitation, old chap. To where?" Poirot's eyes twinkled as he adjusted his pince-nez and read aloud. "Dear Monsieur Poirot, it would be the greatest honour if you would consent to deliver a guest lecture at Ashwell College on the subject of deductive reasoning. Your reputation as the foremost detective of our age precedes you. We anticipate your presence on the 15th of October. Yours sincerely, Dr. Evelyn Warrender, Dean of Faculty." Hastings leaned forward, intrigued. Ashwell College? Rather prestigious, isn't it? All those ivy-covered walls and dusty scholars. "But why you, Poirot? You're not exactly an academic." Poirot's lips curved into a slight smile. "Précisément, mon ami. It is this that intrigues me. Why does a college of learned professors seek the services of Hercule Poirot, a man of action, not of lecture halls? There is, I suspect, more to this invitation than meets the eye." He tapped the letter thoughtfully against his chin. "The method, Hastings, the method is everything. This Dr. Warrender writes with elegance, but there is a certain urgency in her words, a tension that betrays itself in the flourish of her pen. No, there is something amiss at Ashwell College." Hastings chuckled. "You're reading an entire mystery into a polite letter, Poirot. Perhaps they just want a bit of your fame to draw a crowd." "Perhaps," Poirot conceded, though his tone suggested otherwise. "But the little grey cells, they do not rest. They whisper to me that all is not as it seems. I shall accept this invitation, and you, mon cher Hastings, will accompany me. We shall see what secrets lie beneath the surface of this academic idyll." 2 days later, Poirot and Hastings found themselves aboard a train bound for Oxfordshire. The countryside rolled past in a patchwork of green fields and golden woods, the air crisp with the promise of winter. Poirot, immaculate in his overcoat and Homburg hat, gazed out the window, his mind already turning over possibilities. "Tell me, Hastings," he said, breaking the comfortable silence. "What do you know of Ashwell College?" "Not much, I'm afraid," Hastings admitted, rubbing his chin. "Old place, founded centuries ago, known for its history and literature departments. Bit of a reputation for eccentric professors, I hear. Oh, and there was some scandal years back. Something about a missing manuscript, I think. All hushed up, of course." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "A scandal, you say? This is most interesting. The past, it has a way of casting long shadows, does it not?" The train slowed as it approached Ashwell Station, a quaint platform bordered by hedgerows. A young man in a tweed suit awaited them, his face pale and his manner slightly nervous. He introduced himself as Mr. Cedric Lyle, assistant to the Dean. "Monsieur Poirot, Captain Hastings," Lyle said, bowing slightly. "Dr. Warrender sends her apologies for not meeting you herself. Urgent matters, you understand. I'm to escort you to the college." Poirot observed the young man closely, noting the faint tremor in his hands. and the way his eyes darted toward the horizon. "Urgent matters, you say? Of what nature, Monsieur Lyle?" Lyle hesitated, then forced a smile. "Oh, nothing serious, I'm sure. Just administrative concerns. Shall we?" The drive to Ashwell College was short but picturesque, the road winding through ancient oaks to reveal a sprawling campus of stone buildings, their spires piercing the sky. Students in gowns hurried across the quadrangle, their laughter mingling with the rustle of leaves. Yet Poirot sensed an undercurrent of unease, a tightness in the air that belied the serene setting. As they entered the main hall, Dr. Evelyn Warrender greeted them. She was a tall woman in her 50s, with sharp grey eyes and an air of quiet authority. Her handshake was firm, but her smile did not quite reach her eyes. "Monsieur Poirot, Captain Hastings, welcome to Ashwell," she said. "We are honoured to have you. I trust your journey was pleasant." "Most pleasant, madame," Poirot replied, bowing slightly. "But tell me, what is it that troubles you? For I sense that all is not well within these ancient walls." Dr. Warrender's smile faltered, and for a moment her composure slipped. "You are perceptive, Monsieur Poirot. There have been tensions among the faculty, rivalries perhaps, but nothing to concern a man of your talents. Come, let me introduce you to our staff." As they followed her through the oak-panelled corridors, Poirot's keen eyes missed nothing. The hurried glance of a passing professor, the whispered conversation between two students, the faint scratch of a pen in a distant room. The little grey cells were already at work, and Hercule Poirot knew that Ashwell College held secrets that would soon demand his full attention. Chapter 2. The Shadow of Suspicion. The grand dining hall of Ashwell College gleamed with the soft light of chandeliers, their glow reflecting off-polished silver and the dark wood of the long table. Hercule Poirot, seated to the right of Dr. Evelyn Warrender, surveyed the assembled company with his characteristic precision. Captain Hastings, opposite him, was already engrossed in a hearty plate of roast beef. But Poirot's attention was fixed on the faculty and students gathered for the evening meal. Each face, each gesture, was a piece in the puzzle that his little grey cells were beginning to assemble. Dr. Warrender rose, her voice clear and commanding. "My dear colleagues and students, it is my pleasure to welcome Monsieur Hercule Poirot, the renowned detective, and his companion, Captain Hastings. Monsieur Poirot will deliver a lecture tomorrow on the art of deduction. I trust you will make them feel at home." A polite murmur of approval rippled through the room, but Poirot noted the undercurrents. A professor's tight smile, a student's averted gaze, the clink of a fork set down too quickly. Something was amiss, and it was not merely academic rivalry. To Poirot's left sat Professor Lionel Grayson, a historian with a shock of white hair and a booming voice that carried the weight of authority. "Monsieur Poirot," he said, leaning forward, "I trust you'll find our humble college a worthy subject for your observations, though I confess I've little patience for mysteries outside the pages of history." Poirot inclined his head, his eyes gleaming. "History, Monsieur Grayson, is often the greatest mystery of all. The past, it speaks to those who listen." Across the table, Miss Clara Henshaw, a young literature tutor with sharp features and a nervous laugh, interjected, "Oh, but Monsieur Poirot, surely you'll find our college rather dull. We're all buried in books, not intrigues." Her laugh was a touch too shrill, and her fingers twisted a napkin into knots. "Not so dull, mademoiselle," Poirot replied smoothly. "The human heart, it is never dull. It is a book of secrets waiting to be read." Hastings, swallowing a bite of potato, chuckled. You'll have to forgive Poirot, Miss Henshaw. He sees mysteries in everything, even a dinner menu." The table laughed, but Poirot's gaze shifted to a young man at the far end, a student named Thomas Reddington. His dark eyes were fixed on his plate, but his hands were still, as if he were listening intently to every word. Beside him sat Miss Beatrice Langley, a poised young woman with auburn hair, who glanced at Reddington with a mixture of concern and something deeper, affection perhaps. Dr. Warrender steered the conversation to safer ground, discussing the college's upcoming lecture series, but Poirot's attention was drawn to another figure. Dr. Rupert Marlowe, a chemistry professor with a sallow complexion and restless hands. Marlowe's eyes darted between Grayson and Clara Henshaw, and when he spoke, his voice was clipped. "I hope, Monsieur Poirot, you'll not find our scholarly disputes too tedious. Some of us are rather passionate about our work." "Passion, Monsieur Marlowe," Poirot said. "It is the spark that ignites both creation and destruction. I find it most fascinating." As dessert was served, a fine apple tart, Poirot noted Cedric Lyle, the dean's assistant, hovering near the door. Lyle's earlier nervousness had not abated. If anything, it had intensified. He whispered something to a servant, then slipped out of the room. Poirot's moustache twitched slightly. The young man was hiding something, and Poirot intended to discover what. After dinner, Dr. Warrender invited Poirot and Hastings for a tour of the college grounds. The air was crisp, the sky a deep indigo pricked with stars. The ancient buildings loomed like silent sentinels, their windows glowing faintly. As they passed the library, a magnificent structure of stone and stained glass, Poirot paused. "This library, madame," he said, "it is the heart of your college, no? A place where secrets are kept, and perhaps uncovered?" Dr. Warrender's smile was tight. "You're quite right, Monsieur Poirot. Our library holds centuries of knowledge, and I suppose a few secrets. Would you care to see it?" "Perhaps tomorrow," Poirot replied, his tone light but his eyes sharp. "For now, I am content to observe and to listen." As they returned to their guest quarters, Hastings yawned. "Well, Poirot, I must say this place seems pleasant enough. A bit stuffy, perhaps, but no sign of your grand mystery yet." Poirot's expression was enigmatic. "Patience, mon ami. The stage is set, the players are in place, the drama. It will begin soon enough." In the stillness of the night, as Poirot adjusted the cushions on his bed with meticulous care, a faint sound reached his ears. A whisper, a shuffle, a door closing softly somewhere in the college's labyrinthine halls. He smiled to himself. The little grey cells were never wrong. And at Ashwell College, they were already stirring. Chapter 3. The Midnight Scream. The clock in the guest quarters of Ashwell College had just struck midnight when a piercing scream shattered the silence. Hercule Poirot, who had been lying awake, his mind turning over the day's observations, sat bolt upright. His small, precise hands adjusted his silk dressing-gown as he listened intently. The scream had come from the direction of the library, and it carried a note of raw terror that set his little grey cells ablaze. "Mon Dieu," he murmured, slipping into his patent leather shoes. "The drama, it begins." Captain Hastings, roused from a deep sleep, stumbled out of his room, his hair dishevelled. "Good heavens, Poirot! What was that?" "A scream, mon ami," Poirot replied, already moving toward the door. "And where there is a scream in the night, there is trouble. Come, we must hasten." The corridors of Ashwell College were dark, lit only by the faint glow of wall sconces, Poirot's brisk strides led them to the library, where a small crowd had already gathered. Dr. Evelyn Warrender, her face pale but composed, stood at the entrance, her hands clasped tightly. Cedric Lyle, the dean's assistant, hovered nearby, his eyes wide with panic. Several students, including Thomas Reddington and Beatrice Langley, lingered at the edge of the group, their faces etched with shock. "What has happened, madame?" Poirot asked, his voice calm but commanding. Dr. Warrender's lips tightened. "It's Professor Grayson. He's dead." Poirot's eyes narrowed as he stepped into the library. The room was a cathedral of knowledge, its high ceilings adorned with carved beams, its walls lined with leather-bound tomes. In the centre, sprawled across a heavy oak table, lay Professor Lionel Grayson. His white hair was disarrayed, his eyes staring blankly at the ceiling. A pool of blood had seeped into the table's grain, and a single sheet of paper, crumpled and stained, lay beside his outstretched hand. Hastings, peering over Poirot's shoulder, gasped, "Good Lord, Poirot! He's been stabbed!" "Précisément," Poirot said, his gaze sweeping the scene. A letter opener, its blade dark with blood, rested on the floor a few feet away. Scattered papers, some bearing Grayson's bold handwriting, littered the table. Poirot knelt, careful not to disturb the scene, and examined the crumpled note. It bore a single, hastily scrawled phrase, "The truth lies in the shadow." "Most curious," Poirot murmured, straightening. "This note, it is not an accident. It is a message, perhaps from the victim, perhaps from the killer." Dr. Warrender approached, her voice low. "Monsieur Poirot, this is a tragedy. Professor Grayson was a brilliant scholar, though. Not without enemies. I've sent for the police, but I beg you to lend us your expertise until they arrive." Poirot inclined his head. "But of course, madame. The little grey cells, they are already at work. Tell me, who discovered the body?" "Miss Henshaw," Dr. Warrender replied, gesturing to Clara Henshaw, who stood trembling in a corner, her face ashen. "She was working late in the library and found him." Poirot approached the young literature tutor, his manner gentle but probing. "Mademoiselle Henshaw, you will recount for Poirot exactly what you saw, s'il vous plaît." Clara's voice quavered. I was in the reading room going over some manuscripts. I heard a thud, like a book falling, and came to investigate. That's when I saw him, Professor Grayson, lying there. I screamed and ran for help." "And you saw no one else?" Poirot pressed, his green eyes fixed on her. "No one," she whispered, though her gaze flickered briefly toward the shadowed stacks. Poirot turned to the others. "And you, mes amis, where were you when this scream pierced the night?" Thomas Reddington spoke first, his voice steady but his hands clenched. "Beatrice and I were in the common room, discussing tomorrow's lecture. We heard the scream and came running." Dr. Rupert Marlowe, the chemistry professor, cleared his throat. "I was in my laboratory, working on an experiment. The scream startled me, but I was too far to reach here quickly." Cedric Lyle stammered. I was in my office, sorting papers for Dr. Warrender. I heard the scream and came at once." Poirot's moustache twitched. "And yet, Monsieur Lyle, your office is not so far from the library, no? You are a young man, swift of foot. Why did you arrive after the others?" Lyle flushed. I was startled, that's all. I didn't know what to do." "Bien," Poirot said, his tone neutral, but his mind cataloguing every word, every gesture. He turned back to the body, noting the position of Grayson's hand, the angle of the wound, the undisturbed dust on the surrounding shelves. "This crime, it is not random. It is deliberate, calculated, and the killer, he is still among us." Hastings shivered. "You mean one of them did this?" Poirot's eyes gleamed in the lamplight. "I mean, mon ami, that at Ashwell College the shadows hold many secrets, and Hercule Poirot will bring them into the light." As the distant wail of police sirens echoed through the night, Poirot bent once more over the cryptic note. "The truth lies in the shadow." The words seemed to pulse with meaning, a challenge to his intellect. The game, as he often called it, had begun. Chapter 4. The Little Grey Cells. Awakened, the library of Ashwell College, now a scene of grim tragedy, was bathed in the cold light of dawn. Hercule Poirot stood near the oak table where Professor Lionel Grayson's body had been found, his sharp green eyes scanning every detail. The police had arrived, led by Inspector Caldwell, a gruff man with a walrus moustache and a no-nonsense demeanour. The body had been removed for examination, but Poirot had insisted the crime scene remain untouched for his own inspection. Captain Hastings hovered nearby, scribbling notes in a small pocketbook, his face a mixture of fascination and unease. "Mon ami," Poirot said softly, "observe the order of this chaos. The papers, they are scattered, oui, but not randomly. There is a method here, and it speaks to the killer's purpose." Hastings squinted at the table, where Grayson's notes lay in disarray. "Looks like a mess to me, Poirot. Though that cryptic note, 'The truth lies in the shadow,' it's downright eerie. Do you think Grayson wrote it as he was dying?" Poirot's moustache twitched. "Perhaps, Hastings. Or perhaps it is a taunt from the murderer. We shall see." He bent to examine the letter opener, now sealed in a police evidence bag. Its handle bore the college crest, a detail that did not escape him. "This weapon, it is convenient, no? A letter opener, lying ready to hand. Yet the wound was deep, precise. The killer? He is not impulsive." Inspector Caldwell approached, his boots heavy on the polished floor. "Monsieur Poirot, I've heard of your reputation. I'll allow you to poke around, but don't interfere with my men. We've got statements from everyone who was near the library last night. Care to hear them?" "Mais oui, Inspector," Poirot replied, his tone polite but firm. "But first, I must ask, have you found any fingerprints on the letter opener?" Caldwell shook his head. "Wiped clean, not a smudge. Whoever did this knew what they were about." Poirot nodded, unsurprised. "Very well. Let us speak with Mademoiselle Henshaw first. She discovered the body, and her account. It interests me greatly." Clara Henshaw was waiting in a small study off the library, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Her eyes were red-rimmed, but she met Poirot's gaze with a semblance of composure. "Monsieur Poirot, I've told the police everything. I don't know what else I can say. You can say, mademoiselle, what you did not say last night," Poirot said gently, seating himself opposite her. "You were working late, oui? But the reading room, it is some distance from this table. What drew you to this precise spot?" Clara hesitated, her fingers tightening. I heard a noise, as I said, a thud. I thought someone might be in trouble." "And yet," Poirot pressed, "you did not call out or fetch help immediately. You came alone to investigate. That is most brave, or perhaps most curious." Her cheeks flushed. "I wasn't thinking clearly. I just acted." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "The mind, it acts before the heart sometimes, no? Tell me, did you know Professor Grayson well?" "He was my mentor," Clara admitted, her voice softening. "He was brilliant, but demanding. He had high expectations, and not everyone met them." "Enemies, perhaps?" Poirot asked, his eyes never leaving her face. Clara looked away. "He clashed with Dr. Marlowe often. They disagreed about funding for their departments, and some students found him harsh." Poirot made a mental note, then turned to Hastings. "Mon ami, fetch Dr. Marlowe, s'il vous plaît. His perspective, it will be illuminating." As Hastings left, Poirot paced the library, his gaze lingering on a bookshelf near the crime scene. One shelf was slightly askew, as if a book had been hastily removed or replaced. He reached up, his fingers brushing a volume of medieval history. Behind it, tucked into the shadow of the shelf, was a small, folded piece of paper. He unfolded it carefully, revealing a list of names in Grayson's handwriting. Marlowe, Henshaw, Reddington, Lyle. Each name was underlined, with a question mark beside Reddington's. "Tiens," Poirot murmured. "The professor, he was suspicious of those around him. But why?" Dr. Rupert Marlowe entered, his sallow face taut with irritation. "Monsieur Poirot, I've already spoken to the police. I was in my laboratory all evening. I've nothing to add." "On the contrary, monsieur," Poirot said, his tone mild but piercing. "You and Professor Grayson, you were not amiss, were you? There was tension, perhaps over resources." Marlowe's jaw tightened. Grayson was a tyrant. He hoarded funding for his precious history department, leaving my chemistry research starved. But I didn't kill him, if that's what you're implying. Poirot raised a hand. "I imply nothing, monsieur. I observe, and I observe that your laboratory, it is not so far from this library. A short walk, no?" Marlowe's eyes flickered. "I was working. My assistant can confirm it." "Bien," Poirot said, dismissing him with a nod. As Marlowe left, Poirot turned to Hastings, who had returned. "This list, Hastings, it is a thread in the tapestry. Grayson suspected these four, but for what? And why the question mark by Reddington's name?" Hastings frowned. "Sounds like Grayson was digging into something dangerous. Maybe that's what got him killed." "Précisément," Poirot said, his eyes gleaming. "The truth, it lies in the shadow, as the note says." "But whose shadow, mon ami? That is the question." Outside the college bell tolled, a sombre sound that echoed through the misty morning. Poirot knew the killer was watching, waiting, perhaps even among those he had just questioned. The little grey cells were humming, and the mystery of Ashwell College was only beginning to unfold. Chapter 5. Whispers of the Past. The morning mist clung to the spires of Ashwell College, lending an air of secrecy to the ancient buildings. Hercule Poirot, immaculate in his tailored suit despite the early hour, stood in the quadrangle, his keen eyes scanning the faces of passing students. Captain Hastings, bundled in a scarf against the chill, joined him, his breath visible in the crisp air. "Poirot," Hastings said, rubbing his hands together, "this place feels gloomier by the minute. That list you found, Marlowe, Henshaw, Reddington, Lyle. It's as if Grayson was compiling a dossier on his own colleagues." "Précisément, mon ami," Poirot replied, his moustache twitching thoughtfully. "Professor Grayson, he was a man who saw shadows where others saw only light. This list, it suggests he was investigating something or someone. We must learn what it was that made him so suspicious." Their destination was the college's administrative office, where Dr. Evelyn Warrender had agreed to meet them. As they entered, Poirot noted the orderly stacks of files and the faint scent of ink and old paper. Dr. Warrender, seated behind a polished desk, looked weary, her sharp grey eyes clouded with strain. "Monsieur Poirot," she began, "Inspector Caldwell tells me you've been most thorough. Have you made any progress?" Poirot inclined his head. "Progress, madame, is a matter of the little grey cells assembling the pieces. I wish to know more about Professor Grayson, his work, his enemies, his past. There is talk of a scandal, long ago. You will enlighten me, s'il vous plaît." Dr. Warrender's lips tightened, but she nodded. Very well. 20 years ago, Ashwell was shaken by a controversy involving Grayson. He was then a young lecturer, ambitious and brilliant. A rare manuscript, a 14th century chronicle, went missing from the library. Grayson was accused of stealing it to sell to a private collector. The evidence was circumstantial, and the matter was hushed up, but the suspicion lingered. Hastings raised an eyebrow. A thief, eh? That's a motive for someone holding a grudge. Perhaps, Poirot said, his tone measured. But tell me, madame, who accused him? And was the manuscript ever recovered? Dr. Warrender hesitated. The accusation came from a colleague, Professor Edmund Holt, now retired. The manuscript was never found, but Grayson's reputation recovered, mostly. He swore his innocence, and his later work on medieval history restored his standing. Poirot's eyes gleamed. And yet, the shadow of this scandal, it follows him still. His recent research, do you know its nature? He was working on a book, Dr. Warrender replied. Something about hidden truths in medieval texts. He was secretive about it, but he spent hours in the library, poring over old records. Most interesting, Poirot murmured. He turned to Hastings. We must examine Grayson's study, mon ami. His papers, they may hold the key to his suspicions and his death. Grayson's study was a small, cluttered room in the history department. Its walls lined with books and maps. A desk overflowed with notes, some in Grayson's bold script, others marked with cryptic symbols. Poirot's delicate fingers sifted through the papers, pausing at a journal entry dated a week earlier. The Chronicle's secret is closer than I thought. R.M. knows more than he admits. Must confront him. R.M., Hastings said, peering over Poirot's shoulder. That's Rupert Marlowe, surely. Perhaps, Poirot said, his voice low. Or perhaps another. We must not assume, Hastings. Assumptions, they are the fog that obscures the truth. As they left the study, they encountered Thomas Reddington, the student whose name had appeared on Grayson's list with a question mark. He was hurrying down the corridor, his dark eyes shadowed with fatigue. Monsieur Reddington, Poirot called, his tone genial but firm. A moment, if you please. You were a student of Professor Grayson, non? What can you tell me of his recent demeanour? Reddington stopped, his posture tense. He was preoccupied. Always in the library, muttering about some discovery. He seemed on edge, especially around Dr. Marlowe. And you? Poirot asked, his gaze piercing. Did you find him a harsh mentor, as some say? Reddington's jaw tightened. He was strict but fair. I respected him. He pushed us to question everything, to dig deeper. He hesitated, then added, he mentioned something about a hidden truth once, said it could change how we see the past. Poirot nodded, filing away the information. Merci, monsieur. You have been most helpful. As Reddington walked away, Hastings frowned. That lad's hiding something, Poirot. He's too jumpy. Oui, Hastings, Poirot agreed. But so are they all. The past, it is a ghost that haunts this college, and Grayson's death, it is tied to its whispers. Back in the quadrangle, Poirot paused, his eyes drawn to the library's towering silhouette. The Chronicle, the list, the note in the shadow, these are threads in a tapestry, mon ami. And I, Hercule Poirot, will unravel it. The wind carried a faint rustle, as if the college itself were whispering its secrets. Poirot's little grey cells hummed, sensing that the truth was closer, yet still veiled in shadow. Chapter 6. The Alibi Puzzle. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the quadrangle of Ashwell College, where Hercule Poirot stood with Captain Hastings, his sharp eyes fixed on the library's arched windows. The air was heavy with the scent of damp leaves. and a chill wind hinted at the storm brewing within the college's walls. Poirot's mind was a whirl of details, the cryptic note, the missing manuscript, Grayson's list. But now his focus turned to the alibis of those closest to the crime. "Mon ami," Poirot said, adjusting his Homburg hat, "the alibi, it is like a house of cards. It appears solid, but one false card, and the whole structure collapses. We must test these alibis with care." Hastings nodded, flipping open his notebook. "Right, let's go over them again. Clara Henshaw was in the reading room, heard a thud, found Grayson. Marlowe claims he was in his laboratory. Reddington and Beatrice Langley were in the common room together, and Lyle was in his office, sorting papers." "Précisément," Poirot said, his moustache twitching. "But the timing, Hastings, it is the key. The scream, it was heard at midnight, yet the accounts, they do not align perfectly. Come, we shall begin with Mademoiselle Henshaw." They found Clara Henshaw in the literature department, grading essays at a cluttered desk. Her hands trembled slightly as she looked up, her sharp features drawn with fatigue. "Monsieur Poirot, have you found something? I can't stop thinking about poor Professor Grayson." Poirot seated himself, his manner gentle but probing. "Mademoiselle, you said you were in the reading room when you heard the thud. At what time, precisely, did this occur?" Clara frowned, her fingers twisting a pencil. "It was just before midnight. I glanced at the clock when I heard it, perhaps 5 minutes to 12. I went to investigate and found him. And yet," Poirot said, his voice soft but insistent, "the scream that alerted the college, it was heard at midnight exactly. 5 minutes, mademoiselle, is a long time to cross a library. What delayed you?" Clara's eyes widened. I was startled. I didn't rush immediately. I thought it might be nothing. A book falling, perhaps." Poirot's gaze held hers. "And you saw no one else? No shadow, no sound, before the thud?" "No," she said quickly, too quickly. "No one." "Merci," Poirot said, rising. As they left, he murmured to Hastings, "She is nervous, mon ami. 5 minutes unaccounted for. It is a crack in her story." Next, they sought Dr. Rupert Marlowe in his laboratory. A stark room filled with glass beakers and the faint smell of chemicals. Marlowe was cleaning a test tube, his movements jerky. "Monsieur Poirot, I've told you I was here all evening. My assistant, Mr. Poole, saw me." "Indeed?" Poirot said, his eyes scanning the room. A clock on the wall read 10 minutes slow, a detail he noted silently. "And what experiment kept you so late, Monsieur Marlowe?" "A study on chemical compounds," Marlowe said curtly. "Nothing that concerns Grayson's death." "Perhaps," Poirot replied. "But tell me, how long does it take to walk from this laboratory to the library?" Marlowe's jaw tightened. 5 minutes, perhaps less. But I wasn't there. Poole will confirm I never left." Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. "We shall speak with Monsieur Poole, then." They found Thomas Reddington and Beatrice Langley in the common room, sitting close together, their faces pale. Beatrice spoke first, her voice steady but her eyes anxious. "We were here, Monsieur Poirot, discussing your lecture. We heard the scream and ran to the library together." "And you were together the entire time?" Poirot asked, his gaze shifting to Reddington. "Yes," Reddington said firmly, though his hands fidgeted. "We were talking about Grayson's latest seminar. He'd been intense lately." "Intense, monsieur?" Poirot prompted. "He kept going on about hidden truths," Reddington said. "Said he was close to proving something big. He wouldn't tell us what." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "And you, Mademoiselle Langley, you agree with this account?" Beatrice nodded. but her fingers brushed Reddington's arm, a gesture Poirot did not miss. "Yes, we were here. We didn't see anything until the scream." As they left, Poirot stopped by Cedric Lyle's office, a cramped space piled with papers. Lyle was sorting files, his movements frantic. "Monsieur Lyle," Poirot said, "you were in this office at midnight, oui? Yet you arrived at the library after the others. Why the delay?" Lyle's face reddened. I froze when I heard the scream. I wasn't sure what to do. By the time I got there, everyone was already gathering." Poirot's smile was polite but piercing. "And these papers you were sorting, may I see them?" Lyle hesitated, then gestured to a stack of administrative forms. Poirot glanced at them, noting a letter dated the previous day, addressed to Grayson, marked confidential. "Most interesting," he murmured. As they returned to the quadrangle, Hastings shook his head. "They all sound plausible, Poirot, but something's off. Clara's 5 minutes, Marlowe's slow clock, Lyle's delay, they don't add up." "Exactement," Poirot said, his eyes gleaming. "The alibis, they are like a puzzle with pieces that do not fit. But the little grey cells, they see the pattern forming. There is a lie here, Hastings, and it hides in the shadow of the truth." A distant bell tolled, signalling the end of the afternoon. Poirot's mind raced, piecing together the inconsistencies, the nervous glances, the whispered secrets. The killer was clever, but Hercule Poirot was more so, and the truth was drawing nearer with every step. Chapter 7. A second tragedy. The evening air at Ashwell College was thick with unease, the ancient stones seeming to absorb the whispers of fear that rippled through the halls. Hercule Poirot, seated in the guest quarters with Captain Hastings, was reviewing his notes when a frantic knock interrupted their discussion. Hastings opened the door to find Cedric Lyle, his face pale as chalk, his hands trembling. "Monsieur Poirot!" Lyle gasped. It's Miss Henshaw. She's been found in the rose garden. She's dead." Poirot's eyes sharpened, and he rose swiftly, his small frame radiating authority. "Mon Dieu, another death! Lead us to her, Monsieur Lyle, at once!" The rose garden, nestled behind the library, was a quiet enclave of blooming flowers, now marred by tragedy. Clara Henshaw lay crumpled among the thorny bushes, her sharp features frozen in a mask of surprise. A thin trickle of blood stained her blouse, and a small vial, its contents spilled, glinted in the moonlight beside her. Inspector Caldwell and his men were already cordoning off the area, their lanterns casting eerie shadows. Hastings, his face grim, knelt beside the body. "Good Lord, Poirot! Poison, do you think? That vial?" Poirot's gaze was fixed on the scene, his little grey cells whirring. "Perhaps, mon ami, but observe, the vial is empty, yet there is no smell of almonds or other common toxins. This is no ordinary poison." He turned to Inspector Caldwell. "Have you determined the time of death, Inspector?" Caldwell rubbed his moustache. "The doctor estimates she died around 6 this evening, found by a student out for a walk. No witnesses, as far as we know." Poirot nodded, his eyes scanning the garden. A single rose petal, caught on Clara's sleeve, seemed out of place, too pristine for the tangled bushes. He tucked it into his pocket with a handkerchief, then turned to Lyle, who hovered nervously at the edge of the scene. "Monsieur Lyle," Poirot said, his voice calm but piercing, "you seem most distressed. Did you know Mademoiselle Henshaw? Well?" Lyle swallowed hard. She was kind to me, always encouraging. I can't believe anyone would do this." "And yet," Poirot said, "someone did. Tell me, where were you at 6 o'clock?" "I was in the dining hall, preparing for the evening meal," Lyle said quickly. "Dr. Warrender can confirm it." "Bien," Poirot murmured, though his eyes lingered on Lyle's twitching fingers. He turned to Hastings. "This second death, it is no coincidence, mon ami. The killer strikes again, but why Mademoiselle Henshaw? Was she a threat, or merely in the wrong place?" They returned to the library, where Dr. Warrender awaited them, her face drawn with shock. "Monsieur Poirot, this is a nightmare. First Grayson, now Clara. What is happening to our college?" Poirot's expression was grave. "Madame, the killer is bold, striking in the heart of your sanctuary. I must ask, did Mademoiselle Henshaw speak to you of any fears, any suspicions, after Grayson's death?" Dr. Warrender shook her head. She was shaken, of course, but she said nothing specific. Only that she felt watched. "Watched," Poirot repeated, his moustache twitching. "A most significant detail." As they spoke, Thomas Reddington and Beatrice Langley arrived, summoned by the news. Beatrice's eyes were red with tears, and Reddington's face was set in a hard line. "Monsieur Poirot," Beatrice said, her voice trembling, "Clara was my tutor. She was kind, brilliant. Who could do this?" Poirot studied her closely. "Mademoiselle, you and Monsieur Reddington were close to her. Did she ever mention Professor Grayson's research, or anything that troubled her?" Reddington answered, his voice low. "She said Grayson's death scared her. She thought he'd been digging into something dangerous, something about the college's past. She wouldn't say more." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "And you, Monsieur Reddington? You were in Grayson's seminar, no? Did you share Mademoiselle Henshaw's fears?" Reddington hesitated, then nodded. "Grayson was obsessed with that manuscript, the one that went missing years ago. He thought it held some secret, something worth killing for." Dr. Rupert Marlowe, who had joined the group, scoffed. "Nonsense! Grayson was chasing ghosts, and now Clara's paid the price for his obsession." Poirot turned to Marlowe, his gaze piercing. "And you, monsieur, where were you at 6 o'clock?" "In my laboratory, as always," Marlowe said, his tone defensive. "My assistant Poole was with me." "Always the laboratory," Poirot mused. "A convenient refuge, no?" As the group dispersed, Poirot pulled Hastings aside, holding up the rose petal. "This petal, Hastings, it is not from these bushes. It is fresh, untouched by frost. Someone placed it on Mademoiselle Henshaw, perhaps the killer, leaving a mark." Hastings shivered. "2 murders in 2 days, Poirot. The killers, getting desperate." "Oui," Poirot said, his eyes gleaming in the lantern light. "But desperation, it breeds mistakes. And Hercule Poirot, he will be there to catch them." The college bell tolled mournfully, echoing through the darkened grounds. The shadows seemed to close in, but Poirot's mind was alight, piecing together the puzzle of death that gripped Ashwell College. Chapter 8. The Locked Room Riddle. The morning after Clara Henshaw's death, Ashwell College seemed cloaked in a pall of dread. The students moved in hushed groups, their usual chatter silenced by the weight of 2 murders. Hercule Poirot, undeterred by the gloom, stood in the library with Captain Hastings, his sharp eyes tracing the contours of the crime scene where Professor Grayson had met his end. The police had combed the area, but Poirot's little grey cells sought something they had missed, a key to the puzzle that now included Clara's death. "Mon ami," Poirot said, his voice low, "the murder of Mademoiselle Henshaw. It is connected to Grayson's, but how? The rose petal, the vial, the note, each is a piece, but the picture, it remains incomplete." Hastings rubbed his chin. "That petal you found, Poirot, it's odd, isn't it? Placed on her deliberately, you said. And now 2 victims, both tied to Grayson's research. Could the killer be targeting anyone who knew too much?" "Précisément," Poirot replied, his moustache twitching. But there is another thread to follow. Come, we must visit the archive room. Grayson's research. It may hold the answer. The archive room, located in a secluded wing of the library, was a fortress of knowledge. Its heavy oak door secured with a single, sturdy lock. Dr. Warrender had provided the key, her face etched with worry as she handed it over. Monsieur Poirot, this room contains our most valuable records. Grayson spent hours here. I trust you'll be discreet. Discretion, madame, is my watchword, Poirot said, bowing slightly. Inside, the air was thick with the musty scent of old parchment. Shelves towered to the ceiling, filled with manuscripts and ledgers. Poirot's eyes scanned the room, noting a small desk where Grayson's notes were neatly stacked, too neatly, as if arranged by someone other than the professor. But it was the door that drew his attention. The lock was pristine, showing no signs of tampering, yet a faint scratch on the frame caught his eye. Tiens, Poirot murmured, running a finger along the scratch. This door, it was locked when Grayson was killed, non? And yet, the killer entered and left without leaving a trace. Hastings frowned. A locked room. But how, Poirot? The windows are too high, and there's no other entrance. Poirot's eyes gleamed. The impossible, mon ami, is only impossible until the little grey cells reveal its simplicity. Observe the floor, there, near the desk. Hastings knelt, squinting at a faint scuff mark in the chute d'arce. Oh, dust. Looks like someone dragged something heavy. But what? Poirot did not answer immediately. Instead, he examined the desk, finding a hidden drawer that sprang open with a gentle press. Inside was a single sheet of paper, written in Grayson's hand. The Chronicle's cipher points to the vault. CL must not know. CL, Hastings said, peering over Poirot's shoulder. Cedric Lyle, perhaps? Or Clara Henshaw? Perhaps, Poirot said, folding the paper carefully. But this vault, it is a new piece of the puzzle. We must learn its location. Their investigation was interrupted by Inspector Caldwell, who entered with a grim expression. Monsieur Poirot, we've confirmed Miss Henshaw's cause of death. Poison, a rare alkaloid. The vial contained traces of it. No fingerprints, though, just like the letter opener. Poirot nodded, unsurprised. The killer, he is meticulous. But the locked room, Inspector, it intrigues me. Was this archive checked after Grayson's death? Caldwell shook his head. It was locked tight. Only Dr. Warrender and Grayson had keys. And yet, Poirot said, someone entered. The scuff mark, the arranged papers, they tell a story. The killer he returned here, perhaps to hide something or to find it. Leaving the archive, Poirot and Hastings sought out Cedric Lyle, who was in his office, his face pale and drawn. Monsieur Lyle, Poirot said, his tone gentle but firm, you were close to Professor Grayson, non? Did he ever speak of a vault? Lyle's eyes widened, and he stammered, A vault? No, he never mentioned it. Why do you ask? Poirot's smile was enigmatic. Because, monsieur, the truth, it hides in locked places. And you, I think, know more than you say. Lyle's hands shook, but he said nothing more. As they left, Poirot turned to Hastings. The locked room, the vault, the cipher, these are not separate mysteries, mon ami. They are one. The killer, he seeks something Grayson found, and Mademoiselle Henshaw, she was too close to the truth. Hastings shivered. But who's next, Poirot? This killer's ruthless. Oui, Poirot said, his eyes narrowing. But the little grey cells, they are more ruthless still. The riddle of the locked room, it will yield its secret, and with it, the killer's identity. As they stepped into the fading light of the quadrangle, the college seemed to hold its breath, its shadows whispering of secrets yet to be uncovered. Poirot's mind was alight, the puzzle tightening with every step. Chapter 9. Secrets in the Archives. The archive room of Ashwell College, with its towering shelves and musty air, seemed to pulse with secrets as Hercule Poirot returned, his small, precise figure dwarfed by the weight of centuries-old knowledge. Captain Hastings followed, clutching his notebook, his face a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. The locked room riddle and the note about a vault had sharpened Poirot's focus, and he was determined to uncover the truth hidden in Grayson's research. "Mon ami," Poirot said, his voice low but resonant, "the archives, they are the heart of this mystery. Grayson's work, it touched something dangerous, a secret worth killing for. We must find it." Hastings glanced at the endless rows of manuscripts. "Needle in a haystack, Poirot. Where do we even start?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "With method, Hastings. Always with method. Grayson's notes mentioned a cipher and a vault. We shall look for records tied to the missing manuscript, the chronicle from the scandal of 20 years ago." They began their search, Poirot's delicate fingers sifting through dusty ledgers and fragile parchments. The silence was broken only by the rustle of pages and the occasional creak of the ancient shelves. After an hour, Poirot paused at a leather-bound volume labelled College Records, 1905 to 1915. He opened it, his eyes scanning the faded ink with precision. "Tiens," he murmured, pointing to an entry dated 1910. "Here is the record of the missing chronicle, a 14th-century text, said to contain a coded map to a hidden vault beneath the college. The accusation against Grayson, it was never proven, but the manuscript's loss caused a rift among the faculty." Hastings leaned in, reading over Poirot's shoulder. "A coded map. Sounds like something out of a novel. Do you think Grayson found it?" "Perhaps," Poirot said, his moustache twitching. "Or perhaps he found something else. A truth that threatened someone. Observe this." He turned to another page, where a letter was tucked between the records. It was written in a hurried hand, signed by Professor Edmund Holt, the man who had accused Grayson of theft. The letter read, "Lionel, your ambition blinds you. The chronicle's secrets are not yours to claim. Leave it buried, or face the consequences." Hastings whistled. "That's practically a threat, Poirot. Could Holt still be involved, even if he's retired?" Poirot's eyes narrowed. "The past, mon ami, it has long fingers. But Holt, he is not our killer, not directly. This letter, it speaks of betrayal, of ambition. We must learn who else knew of the chronicle's secrets." Their search was interrupted by Dr. Evelyn Warrender, who entered the archive, her face pale but composed. "Monsieur Poirot, have you found anything? The college is in chaos. Students are terrified, and the faculty are at each other's throats." Poirot held up the letter. "Madame, this letter from Professor Holt to Grayson, it suggests a deep conflict over the missing chronicle. Did others know of its significance?" Dr. Warrender hesitated, then nodded. Grayson believed the chronicle held a key to a hidden vault, possibly containing relics or documents of immense value. He was obsessed with proving his innocence from the old scandal. Clara Henshaw assisted him, and, I believe, Dr. Marlowe was aware of the research. "Marlowe," Poirot repeated, his tone thoughtful. "And what of Monsieur Lyle? His name, it appears in Grayson's notes, with suspicion." Dr. Warrender's eyes flickered. "Cedric? He's just an assistant, loyal, but unremarkable. Grayson trusted him with mundane tasks, nothing more. Perhaps," Poirot said, his smile enigmatic. "But the unremarkable, madame, they often hide the most remarkable secrets." As Dr. Warrender left, Poirot returned to the shelves, his fingers pausing at a small, unmarked box tucked behind a row of ledgers. Inside was a single sheet written in Grayson's hand. The cipher is solved. The vault lies beneath the chapel. RM and CL must be watched. They know too much. RM and CL again, Hastings said, his voice tense. Marlowe and Lyle, surely. But why would Grayson suspect his own assistant? Poirot folded the sheet carefully. Because, mon ami, betrayal often comes from those closest to us. The vault, the cipher, the chronicle, these are not mere relics. They are the motive for murder. They left the archive, the heavy door locking behind them with a resounding click. Poirot's mind was alight, piecing together the web of ambition and deceit. He sought out Thomas Reddington, who was lingering in the quadrangle, his dark eyes shadowed with worry. Monsieur Reddington, Poirot said, his tone gentle but probing. You knew of Grayson's work on the Chronicle, non? Did Mademoiselle Henshaw share his secrets with you? Reddington's jaw tightened. She mentioned the vault once, said Grayson was close to finding it. She was excited but scared. She thought someone was following her. And you, Poirot asked, did you share her fear? Reddington hesitated, then nodded. Grayson said the vault's contents could ruin reputations. I thought he was exaggerating until now. As Reddington walked away, Poirot turned to Hastings. The web tightens, mon ami. The killer seeks the vault, and Grayson and Henshaw, they stood in the way. But who else knows its secret? That is the question. The college chapel loomed in the distance, its spire piercing the grey sky. Poirot's little grey cells hummed, sensing the truth was near, hidden in the shadows of Ashwell's past. Chapter 10. The Gathering Storm. The great hall of Ashwell College was a cavern of oak beams and flickering candlelight, its long table now a stage for a tense gathering. Hercule Poirot had requested the presence of the key figures in the investigation. Dr. Evelyn Warrender, Dr. Rupert Marlowe, Cedric Lyle, Thomas Reddington, and Beatrice Langley, to discuss the murders of Professor Grayson and Clara Henshaw. The air was thick with suspicion, and the shadows cast by the candles seemed to dance with secrets. Captain Hastings stood by Poirot's side, his notebook open, his eyes darting between the assembled faces. Mes amis, Poirot began, his voice clear and commanding. We are gathered here because two souls have been taken from this college, Professor Grayson and Mademoiselle Henshaw. The killer, he is among us, and the time for concealment is over. I, Hercule Poirot, will uncover the truth. Dr. Warrender, seated at the head of the table, clasped her hands tightly. Monsieur Poirot, this is a distressing time. Surely you don't suspect one of us? Poirot's green eyes gleamed. Madame, I suspect everyone until the little grey cells prove otherwise. Let us speak plainly. Professor Grayson's research into the missing chronicle and its cipher, it threatened someone. Mademoiselle Henshaw, she knew too much, and so she, too, was silenced. Dr. Marlowe slammed a fist on the table, his sallow face flushed. This is absurd. Grayson was a fool, chasing myths about a vault. I had nothing to do with his death or Clara's. Poirot raised a hand, his tone calm but piercing. And yet, Monsieur Marlowe, your name appears in Grayson's notes, marked with suspicion. You quarrelled with him over funding, non? And your laboratory, it is so conveniently close to the library. Marlowe's eyes blazed. I was working. My assistant Poole told you that. You're grasping at straws, Poirot. Cedric Lyle, pale and fidgeting, spoke up, his voice trembling. Monsieur Poirot, I only did what Grayson asked. I sorted his papers, ran his errands. I didn't know about any vault. Poirot's gaze fixed on Lyle. "And yet, Monsieur Lyle, your name, too, is in Grayson's notes, marked with distrust. You were in the dining hall when Mademoiselle Henshaw died. Oui. But the rose petal found on her body, it was fresh, not from the garden. Did you perhaps bring it from elsewhere?" Lyle's face crumpled. "I don't know what you mean. I cared about Clara. She was kind to me." Beatrice Langley, her auburn hair catching the candlelight, gripped Reddington's hand. "Monsieur Poirot, please. Clara was our friend. She was terrified after Grayson's death. She said someone was watching her, following her. We tried to protect her." Reddington nodded, his jaw tight. Grayson's research was dangerous. He told me once that the vault's contents could ruin lives. Clara must have gotten too close. Poirot's moustache twitched. "And you, Monsieur Reddington? Your name, it bears a question mark in Grayson's list. Why did he doubt you?" Reddington's eyes darkened. "I don't know. He was paranoid, always looking over his shoulder. Maybe he thought I was too curious about his work." The room fell silent, the weight of accusations hanging heavy. Dr. Warrender rose, her voice sharp. "Monsieur Poirot, this is tearing us apart. If you have evidence, present it. Otherwise, you're stirring up chaos." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "Evidence, madame, is like a mosaic. Each piece seems small, but together it forms the truth. The locked archive, the cipher, the rose, petal, the vial of poison, these are pieces. And now I see the pattern forming." Marlowe stood abruptly, his chair scraping the floor. "I've had enough of this. You're accusing us all without proof. I'm going back to my laboratory." "Remain, monsieur," Poirot said, his voice like steel. "To leave now is to invite suspicion. The killer, he is clever, but he cannot hide forever." As Marlowe sank back into his seat, a sudden crash echoed from the hall's entrance. A student burst in, breathless. "Monsieur Poirot, the chapel, it's been broken into. Someone's tampered with the crypt." Poirot's eyes blazed with sudden clarity. "The vault," he murmured. "The killer moves quickly. Mes amis, remain here. Inspector Caldwell, come with me. Hastings, you too." As they hurried toward the chapel, Hastings whispered, "Poirot, do you think the killer's after the vault now?" "Oui, mon ami," Poirot said, his pace brisk. "The storm gathers, and the killer grows desperate, but Hercule Poirot, he is ready." The chapel loomed ahead, its ancient stones bathed in moonlight. The crypt's entrance, a heavy stone slab, was ajar, revealing a dark staircase descending into shadow. Poirot's little grey cells hummed, sensing the truth was within reach, hidden in the depths of Ashwell's secrets. Chapter 11. The final clue. The crypt beneath Ashwell College's chapel was a cold, shadowed labyrinth, its stone walls damp with the weight of centuries. Hercule Poirot descended the narrow staircase, his patent leather shoes echoing softly, followed by Captain Hastings and Inspector Caldwell. The air was thick with the scent of earth and decay, and the flickering light of Caldwell's lantern revealed a small chamber, its center dominated by a stone vault sealed with an ancient lock. The lock was scratched, as if recently forced, but the vault remained unopened. "Mon Dieu," Poirot murmured, his sharp eyes scanning the chamber. "The killer, he sought the vault, but he has not succeeded yet." Hastings shivered, his breath visible in the chill. "This place gives me the creeps, Poirot. Do you think Grayson's chronicle really leads here?" "Oui, mon ami," Poirot replied, his voice low but resolute. "The chronicle's cipher, it points to this vault. But it is not the treasure that drives the killer. It is the fear of what it reveals." Inspector Caldwell, his walrus moustache bristling, examined the lock. "Someone's been at this all right, but it's still intact. Whoever it was got interrupted. Poirot nodded, his gaze falling on a small detail near the vault, a single fresh rose petal, identical to the one found on Clara Henshaw's body. He knelt, picking it up with his handkerchief, his moustache twitching with sudden clarity. "This petal, Inspector, it is no accident. It is a signature, a mark of the killer's arrogance." Hastings frowned. "But Poirot, a rose petal? It's so trivial. How can it point to the killer?" Poirot's eyes gleamed in the lantern light. "The trivial, mon ami, is often the most profound. This petal, it is not from the college gardens, nor from the rose bushes where Mademoiselle Henshaw was found. It is from a rare variety, cultivated in a greenhouse. And at Ashwell, there is only one greenhouse, attached to the chemistry laboratory." "Marlowe!" Hastings exclaimed. "His laboratory's got that greenhouse for his experiments. You think he's leaving these petals deliberately?" "Perhaps," Poirot said, his tone enigmatic, "but we must not leap to conclusions. The petal, it is the final clue, but it must be placed in the mosaic of evidence, the locked archive, the cipher, the list, the poison." They returned to the great hall, where the suspects remained under the watchful eye of a constable. Dr. Warrender, Dr. Marlowe, Cedric Lyle, Thomas Reddington, and Beatrice Langley sat in tense silence, their faces betraying a mix of fear and defiance. Poirot stood before them, his small frame commanding the room. "Mes amis," he said, his voice steady, "the little grey cells have worked, and the truth, it begins to emerge. The rose petal, found first on Mademoiselle Henshaw, and now in the crypt, it is a thread that ties the murders to the killer. It is a clue so small, yet so revealing." Marlowe's face reddened. "This is ridiculous! A petal? You're building a case on flowers now, Poirot?" Poirot's smile was serene but piercing. "Not just a petal, Monsieur Marlowe. A petal from your greenhouse, where you cultivate rare plants for your chemical experiments. The same greenhouse where you prepared the alkaloid that killed Mademoiselle Henshaw." Marlowe leapt to his feet. "That's preposterous! I was in my laboratory with Poole when Clara died." "Oui," Poirot said, raising a hand. "And yet, the clock in your laboratory, it runs 10 minutes slow. A small detail, but enough to give you time to slip to the rose garden, administer the poison, and return. The petal, it was your mistake, a flourish of pride." Lyle's voice broke the silence, trembling. "But why Clara? And Grayson, what did they do?" Poirot turned to him, his gaze softening. "Monsieur Lyle, your distress, it is genuine, but your secrets, they are not. Grayson's notes marked you with suspicion, and I know why. You too knew of the vault, no?" Lyle's face crumpled, and he nodded. "Grayson confided in me about the Chronicle. He thought it held proof of a scandal, not just his, but one that could ruin the college. I told Clara, hoping she'd help him. I didn't know it would get them killed." Beatrice gasped, gripping Reddington's arm. "Cedric, you fool! You put Clara in danger." Poirot's eyes shifted to Reddington, whose face was a mask of tension. "And you, Monsieur Reddington, with the question mark in Grayson's notes. You were his student, but also his rival. No, you sought the vault's secrets for your own glory." Reddington's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Poirot continued. "The pieces, they fit, but one question remains. Who stood to lose the most if the vault's contents were revealed?" Dr. Warrender's voice was sharp. "Monsieur Poirot, enough! Tell us who the killer is, or stop these accusations." Poirot's smile was calm. "Patience, madame. The truth, it is near. Tomorrow, in this hall, I shall reveal all. Until then, remain vigilant. For the killer, he is desperate, and the vault, It calls to him still." As the group dispersed, Hastings whispered, "Poirot, you're close, aren't you? That petal, it's the key, isn't it?" "Oui, mon ami," Poirot said, his eyes alight. "The petal is the final clue, and tomorrow the little grey cells will lay bare the heart of this mystery." The college bell tolled, its sombre note echoing through the night. The truth was within Poirot's grasp, and the shadows of Ashwell College were about to yield their secrets. Chapter 12. The Denouement. The grand lecture hall of Ashwell College was filled with an expectant hush, as Hercule Poirot stood at the centre, his small, immaculate figure commanding the attention of all. The flickering light of chandeliers cast long shadows across the oak-panelled walls, where Dr. Evelyn Warrender, Dr. Rupert Marlowe, Cedric Lyle, Thomas Reddington, Beatrice Langley, and Inspector Caldwell sat in a tense semicircle. Captain Hastings stood by the door, his notebook clutched tightly, his eyes fixed on Poirot. The air was heavy with anticipation, for Poirot had promised to unmask the killer who had brought death to Ashwell's hallowed halls. "Mes amis," Poirot began, his voice clear and resonant, "we have gathered to uncover the truth behind the murders of Professor Lionel Grayson and Mademoiselle Clara Henshaw. The little grey cells, they have worked tirelessly, and now the mosaic of evidence is complete. The killer, he is among us, and his secrets they can hide no longer." Dr. Warrender's face was pale but composed. "Monsieur Poirot, we trust you to end this nightmare. Who is responsible?" Poirot's green eyes gleamed. "To answer that, we must follow the threads of this mystery. The missing chronicle, the cipher, the vault, the rose petals, and the cryptic note. The truth lies in the shadow. Let us begin with Professor Grayson." He paced slowly, his hands clasped behind his back. Grayson was a man driven by ambition, to clear his name from the scandal of the missing 14th century chronicle, accused 20 years ago of its theft. His research led him to a cipher hidden within the chronicle, pointing to a vault beneath the chapel. A vault said to contain documents that could ruin reputations. Grayson suspected those around him, as evidenced by his list: Marlowe, Henshaw, Reddington, Lyle. But why? Marlowe shifted uncomfortably. "I told you, Poirot. I had no part in this. Grayson's obsession with that vault was his undoing." "Perhaps," Poirot said, his tone mild but piercing. "But let us consider Mademoiselle Henshaw. She was Grayson's confidant, privy to his research. Her death, by a rare alkaloid poison, was no accident. The rose petal found on her body and again in the crypt was a clue. A signature from a greenhouse, one maintained by you, Monsieur Marlowe." Marlowe leapt to his feet. "This is outrageous! I was in my laboratory when Clara died. Poole confirmed it." Poirot raised a hand. "Patience, monsieur. Your laboratory clock, it runs 10 minutes slow. A convenient alibi, no? But it is not you I accuse. The petal, it was a misdirection, placed to cast suspicion on you. The true killer, he is more cunning." A murmur rippled through the room. Poirot turned to Cedric Lyle, whose hands trembled. "Monsieur Lyle, you were Grayson's assistant, trusted with his papers. You knew of the vault, oui? And you told Mademoiselle Henshaw, hoping to protect her. But your fear, it betrays you. Why were you so afraid?" Lyle's voice cracked. I only wanted to help. Grayson said the vault's contents could destroy the college. I didn't kill anyone." "No," Poirot said softly. "You did not, but you know who did." His gaze shifted to Thomas Reddington, whose dark eyes were fixed on the floor. "Monsieur Reddington, your name in Grayson's notes bore a question mark. He doubted you. but not as a killer, as a rival. You sought the vault's secrets for your own glory, no? Reddington's jaw tightened. I respected Grayson. I wanted to help him, not steal his work. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. And yet, the truth lies elsewhere. Let us turn to Mademoiselle Langlais. Beatrice gasped, her hand gripping Reddington's. Me, Monsieur Poirot? I loved Clara. I would never harm her. Précisément, Poirot said, his voice softening. Your love for Mademoiselle Henshaw, it was genuine. But love, it can blind. You were with Monsieur Reddington when the scream was heard, oui? Yet your alibi, it is too perfect, too rehearsed. Poirot turned to face Dr. Warrender, whose composure faltered for the first time. And you, madame, the dean of this college, its guardian. You knew of Grayson's research, of the vault's potential to ruin Ashwell's reputation. The scandal of 20 years ago, it was not just Grayson's disgrace, but yours. Dr. Warrender's eyes widened. What are you implying, Monsieur Poirot? I imply nothing, Poirot said, his voice like steel. I state the truth. The Chronicle, it was not stolen by Grayson, but by you, madame. You sold it to a private collector to fund your rise to dean, but Grayson, he was close to proving it. The vault, it holds proof of your betrayal. A ledger documenting the sale, hidden all of these years. A stunned silence fell. Warrender's face drained of colour. This is preposterous. You have no proof. Poirot held up the folded paper from the archive. Grayson's note about the vault. This, madame, led me to the vault's lock, which I opened this morning with the cipher Grayson decoded. Inside, I found the ledger, your signature, your transaction. You killed Grayson to silence him, and Clara because she learned the truth from Lyle. The rose petals, they were your touch, taken from Marlowe's greenhouse to mislead us. Warrender stood, her voice trembling with rage. You can't prove this. The ledger means nothing. But it does, Poirot said calmly. The poison, it was from Marlowe's laboratory, stolen by you during a visit. The locked archive, you entered with your key, rearranging Grayson's papers to hide your trail. And the crypt, you tried to reach the vault last night, but were interrupted. Inspector Caldwell stepped forward, his face grim. Dr. Warrender, I'll need you to come with me. Warrender's composure shattered, and she sank back into her chair, tears streaming down her face. I only wanted to protect Ashwell. Grayson would have destroyed everything. Poirot's eyes were sad but resolute. The truth, madame, it cannot be buried forever. The little grey cells, they see all. As Caldwell led Warrender away, the hall erupted in whispers. Hastings approached Poirot, his face alight with admiration. By Jove, Poirot, you did it! The rose petals, the ledger, how did you know? Poirot smiled, adjusting his moustache. The little grey cells, mon ami. They see the pattern where others see only chaos. The petal, it was too deliberate, a false clue to point to Marlowe. But the ledger, hidden in the vault, it was the truth that lay in the shadow. The college bell tolled, its sound now one of closure. Ashwell College would heal, its secrets laid bare. Hercule Poirot, his work complete, turned to leave, the weight of justice resting lightly on his shoulders.